Hello, good morning, everybody. This is Anne. Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Disembodied Voice. Justin is once again abandoning us today as he has logistics to figure out for today's shows later. Hey, Kiwi Dog. Kiwi Dog is not wanting to settle down. Can you settle down? She's like, no, I don't want to settle down. Come on, you can do it. Good girl. All right. There we go. Hey, Trouble. How's it going? Hey, Trouble's here, so now we can have a party. Hey, Smallish Sam. Haven't seen you in a while. Welcome back. Yeah, the Kiwi. The Kiwi's been sick, Trouble. I don't know if you heard, but Kiwi is doing okay today. I have to run to the vet today to pick up more meds. But other than that, the Kiwi is eating more. And, thanks for the resub. Thanks for the resub, Sam. Hey, Tashi. How's it going? So here we are, guys. We're gonna Sphinx today. We're gonna Sphinx out. I thought I was gonna do characters this week. I guess I was more in a mood to do player characters last week, and then Kiri blew up. So now I'm just like wanting my Egyptian comfort painting. Yeah, Kiri's getting a little bit better. So they taught actually. You have a good vet when they call you from their home after office hours to check up on your dog. So my vet, called me at like 8 p.m. last night to check up on how Kiri was doing and everything, and to talk to me about stuff. And she definitely noticed that Kiri was very arthritic when she had her. She was very stiff. There's a lot of arthritis in the old dog, but so we'll see about how that goes. But yeah, Sphinx is looking good. But yeah, so I have a good vet. I'm very happy that I picked the vet out here that I did. They were actually a vet with a 5-star rating, like on Yelping or on Google anyway. Solid 5 stars. And so far my experience has been great with them. So yeah, hopefully Kiri will be on the mend. You never know. I mean, like I said, she turns 13 and she is now outside of our average breed lifespan. So every day is a gift. So you never know. You never know with the ODs, the old dogs. All right, so let's see here. I wanted to block in some groundwork on her today. So where is my desert stone? Which you may laugh about that I would be using desert stone, but I created this color especially for Egyptian soil. It is actually the color that I originally created. There's desert sand. Where's my desert stone? Did I totally put it somewhere and forget it? There it is. Yay. So these are colors I created when I was painting the Nefsokar army for Warlord back when we had Warlord and it was actually moving forward. That's such a shame, Trouble. Yeah, our breed founder that was why she started Shiloh's actually. She'd been a GSD person and really hated, she was losing wonderful dogs to hip dysplasia at 2 or 3 years old. So that motivated her to try to fix it, but she knew she couldn't fix it in a breed that had 200,000 dogs in it. So she essentially split off and did her own thing. So that's where Kiri's from. But even the dog with the best hips is gonna start getting a bit stiff when they hit 13. So, as we had Kiri X-rayed, so we know her hips were good. It's just age, it's all of us. I've got a little bit of arthritis in one hip too. It's only base coated Twisted Oma, so it doesn't so much matter. I did show some visual references yesterday, as far as and what colors I was going to use for these, but this is purely base coated. It's not anything else done to it yet. So it's woo, fun. Yeah, 5 dogs or cats at once would be it would be hurting cats. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, it is what it is, right? So yes, here we go. And Desert Stone was something I created. I used photos of Egyptian stonework and temple work and stuff like that to judge what I wanted to use. I created a custom mix for it. And then later on in Bones, I needed a couple of colors. And I'm like, we don't have a good kind of deserty brown tan stone color. And so I decided to finally do these. So they're a matched pair, and you can highlight the desert stone with the desert sand, obviously. If you're going to go up from here, I would go up and start mixing in bleached linen. That would be a good combination of pigments. If you want it to go a little bit yellower, you could also use creamy ivory. If you wanted to go yellower, it is just a little bit lighter than desert sand, and then go up to like linen white. So if you wanted a more yellow, if you wanted a more yellowish sand, you could go that way instead of with the bleached linen. Adding bleached linen to this will just carry it up with exactly this type of color. So if you like this kind of, taupey color that's very natural looking, do it. And if you like a more yellow sand, then you can go up with creamy ivory. Alrighty, so we're gonna block this in. Now, what would I use if I was gonna wash this, which actually on basing, I often do a wash. This is the one place that I utilize washes a lot because it's basing, right? And you want to get some quick shading down, and you want to outline all of this great detail that Julie has sculpted onto this base with the little columns and all that stuff. So the best and fastest way to do this is actually with a wash. So now my only question is, what kind of wash do I want to use? Because I need essentially a darker brown than this. Now, any wash you use is going to... Hey there, GVD. Thanks for the resub. Half a year anniversary. Awesome. Any color that you put over something as a wash is going to change the ground color, right? So this is the trade-off. You could go and just like shade in manually, apply shading to all the places, between these stones and all that. You could do that all by hand. It's just going to take a lot longer. And on basing, it may not be worth it for you. But any color you put over the top of this is going to change it, right? So you got to keep that in mind. Possibly the least changing thing you could do would be to take some brown liner and mix it with your desert stone to make a wash. Probably 1-to-1. And that should give you a dark enough shader, but still keep the color that you're looking for. Anything else, if you use like a shield brown or something like that, you could go with shield or wood stain. But it is, as you can see, it's a much browner color, right? It's got more red in it. It's you can see that it is more red and yellow than the desert stone. And that means it's going to shift this color warmer, like a brown regular soil. So you may lose your deserty feel that way. So you may want to just hesitate when you do that. You may also consider going, yeah, every other brown. We don't really, shield brown is really the grayish, regular, darker brown we've got. So, morning, Mini Painter. How's it going? So really, if you're going to shade, if you're going to wash these suckers, you could do a mix. Now, originally, these colors were created by mixing a gray and a brown together. Like when I was doing them for the Nefso car when I needed to come up with this color. So you could take the shield brown and mix it with something like a stormy gray. And then actually, you could probably use that just fine. In fact, maybe we'll try that. I have both colors. Let me see. Shield brown. Let's see. I've got cloudy gray. I thought I had stormy gray in here. If I don't, then I'll have to use something like carbon. Try to keep all my grays together here. Well, I could probably use cloudy plus shield and adjust it. Darn it, I know I had stormy gray in here. But apparently I decided to misplace it. Oh well. Cloudy gray it is. So we can use these two and mix them to get something that's a little darker. And if we must have it just a little bit darker, we can add a bit of brown liner. Liner is never a bad thing to add for a wash because it is so translucent. Liners make excellent washes. They really are good at it. So when you can use one, you can. Yeah, well, it's... I keep all the paints that I normally use in my drawer, Grim, like the ones that I really reach for a lot or that I like to use, that I think are high utility. But Stormy Gray, sadly, is like, I could mix cloudy and black and get get a similar paint. And so often I just keep cloudy gray in the drawer because I don't want so many paints in the drawer that I can't find what I need quickly. So the drawer is the Anne's MVP paints section, pretty much. So, all right, let's get this desert stone limbered up, and then let's mix our wash. And I'm curious to see how this is going to play, because this Sphinx is so vibrantly colored. Like, she really has rich colors on her, and I'm throwing a muted color at her when I do this. So, we're going to have to kind of see how it looks. Your base work needs to work with your miniature. You definitely don't want them to clash. So I'm going to be assessing this. Now, the nice thing is that, just like I said, a moment ago, we're going to be applying a wash. And if we need to shift the color of this base thing to be more in tune with her, we can with that wash. So it's not a big deal. I'm going to grab my big flat brush because big flat brush is great for base coating. This would be big flat brush. It's a Reaper number 4. It's kind of been like worn off. It's ferrule, but it's a 4 flat from Reaper. Number 2 would work good too. Any large flat brush for terrain. Let me get in focus. Focusing. Boop. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, and the only thing is now that it takes up so much. I had the paint spinner on my desk at home in Texas, but it takes up so much real estate on my desk that, oh, you know what I need to do? I need to actually glue the Sphinx in. Ha ha. Let's see here. I suppose I could leave her off and paint this super fast, though. Then I wouldn't have to worry about getting paint on her. That's actually a better idea. Let's do that. So this is full strength. I'm not going to thin it. It's basing paint. And if I have it thick, I won't need to put 2 coats on necessarily. I might just need to do a touch-up if stuff is not sticking. We'll have to see. Kaz, people asked for light, dark skin with a light body and light wings. So I have not chosen an actual falcon yet to base the wing patterns on. It will have dark patterns on it because this Sphinx will have a dark tuft on her tail, and she's got dark hair, and she's got very dark skin. So she will have some darker color on the wings. I may, because she's a magical creature, also introduce some blue. Like some of the long feathers being blue, like she's dyed them, or because they are because she's magic. Because her hair has definitely got a blue highlight to it. So that is, that's all I've thought of. I tend to work, with wings, I tend to do a lot, and then I figure out what's going to work with the wings. Yeah, I know it'll end up being, falcons have light colored wings on the underside, often with black barring, and then usually a darker color on the outside of the wing, again with black markings. So we'll be doing traditional falcon wings on this. It's just I always will pick a reference photo, and I haven't done that yet. Because I knew that the wings would be the last thing that I did. So usually I would do the wings first, but with the Sphinx, I still, when I started her, wasn't sure exactly which colors were going to work out on her. So I didn't start the wings first, because if I had no idea at that point about the colors on the rest of the model, the wings wouldn't have looked right, or it would have painted me into a corner, and I couldn't have kind of chosen the colors for the Sphinx on the fly. But now that I have the colors for the Sphinx, I know exactly which colors I will be using on the wings, and the only remaining question is the pattern. Yeah, Mini Painter. I don't ever prime them, and so I must wash them for the paint to stick. I just toss them in a plastic mixing bowl with really hot water and a bit of dish soap, and I swoosh them around a lot. And then I rinse them really well and let them dry overnight on a paper towel or a dish towel. And I never have problems with paint adhering. Like, I haven't ever primed my Bones Minis, not ever. And I've painted a lot of them at this point. But I find that the dish soap detergent takes off any extra residue that may block the paint from sticking. So sometimes I'll have like deep in a crevice or something where maybe the soap didn't quite penetrate. I'll have an issue, but it's rare. Yeah, there's always this debate on priming bones, but I never do. Plenty of people like to do it. Just be careful what you use, because some stuff will react. A lot of people airbrush Stynel Res primer from Badger. I think it's from Badger, right? And that's supposed to be good. But otherwise, it really varies whether the solvents in a spray primer are going to react badly with the PVC. And if they do, not only will it stink, it will never quite cure. So you do have to be careful. So yeah, I just avoid the whole, well, will my primer work or not, by just washing the model. Okay, yeah, not having this, taking the Sphinx off actually was a good idea. So I can get all this, I can just paint fast, I don't need to do anything. Hey, Bob and Julie, awesome, you're here. I have a question for you. Fantastic. So yesterday we did a lot of the jewelry and we were trying to figure out what these guys are. And I know that the one on the right on her headdress here is a cobra, but is the left one a vulture or a crocodile? If you remember. Yeah, right, Inara. Exactly. Just experiment, figure out a brand of primer that works for you on your bones, and go for it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with priming bones. Just do it smartly. You know, make sure that the primer that you use is one that's not going to react with the PVC. I'm just lazy. I don't want to airbrush, and I don't care to go out and buy a different primer just for bones. And honestly, since I never have problems painting straight over the surface, I just do it. Like, there's no reason for me to prime, really, if what I have works. Vulture, you think? Yeah, I wondered if you had. I knew you must have had a reference when you were working. Vulture would have, I think, been traditional. One of the traditional ones. It was either crocodile or vulture. We were unable to see because it's so tiny. But I thought vulture because I thought I could see a beak kind of from the side. And so we'll just paint it that way. I'll try to accentuate vultureness and de-accentuate crocodileness. But it's hard with long beak, long snout, right? It's when you're working so tiny. You should know now, Grim. You should know now. Rhonda can take a firm stance against priming bones if she wishes. But Anne's credo is, if it works for you, do it. I'm not going to do it. Don't try to make me do it, because I'll refuse again and again. There's no reason for me to prime a bones. Obviously, Rhonda agrees with me. But if you want to prime them, and if it works for you, and you're not getting a reaction, you go. And you can tell the world that priming bones is for everybody, and everybody should do it. That's fine, too. I'm still going to ignore you. Ah, boy. It's a day. It's a day. Looks like David and I are canceling our Thanksgiving traveling plans, which is smart of us, in my opinion. There's just too much crazy virus action flying around out there. All right, so let's see here. Now I need to I'm going to put her up here before I do her groundwork. I've painted most of the rock under her dark anyway. I want to see how she looks with this stone color. So, all right, that's actually not bad. The desert stone is neutral enough. And I want it to be a different color from her. How about if you do prime your bones, the world will explode, Val? I think it's more like that. So you did it once years ago, still hasn't dried? That's hilarious. Oh yeah, it's good Izzy art, some of the details got stuff. Right, I remember now. Preach, exactly. Okay, so I was worried that the desert stone might be too gray, but it actually warms up a lot when you put it on the model, so I don't think that it clashes with her. I mean, it is a different brown, but the other thing to remember is that if you think the browns are clashing, remember that we're going to darken the shadows here, and we're going to take up the highlights. And when we do that, this color is going to shift. It's also going to introduce more contrast, because right now the golden color of her tail is very much in the same kind of light-dark ratio as our desert stone. But as I highlight this, it's going to become lighter. So there will be a little contrast introduced then by this going notably lighter as we highlight it. So any bit of contrast that we put in is going to help these two colors work together. And the fact that I'm going to put a dark cast shadow under like her tail, and obviously I've kind of blocked one in around her underside right now, but I'll make that darker. So she'll be casting a shadow, and that will also help to separate her from this stonework. We definitely do want her to stand out on top of the stone, so it's not a case of wanting to take the stone closer to her. It's that you want to take the stone farther away from her, but you also either in light, dark, or in color, right? So yeah, well, that's the way it should be. The face and the eyes should be the first thing to grab you. Hold on. This is 77576 Sphinx by Julie Guthrie, who is Green Users, who is in our chat right now. She is a lovely Sphinx. She does have wings. They'll just be the last thing I do. Because it's a lot of painting of patterns on the wings, and people want the, and nice to meet you, Neo. Yeah, no problem. No problem. Sometimes I try to keep the tag in the picture, but it tends to make the camera make the figure darker. You can see how it reacts to the white as the white balance tries to adjust. So I prefer to have a little bit more light on the figure so you can see the details. That's why I keep it around so that I can show you when you ask. Alrighty, so that's drying nicely. I like this. I think I am... Do I want to glue her down yet? No, but I do want to block in the stone color on her base. So I will come out here. I will switch to a brush that is smaller since I need to do a little bit more detail here. Probably use a smaller flat. Yes, Julie is in the chat. Yeah. It is a beautiful sculpt. It's my favorite Sphinx, I think, that I've ever seen. It's... The art, as Bob and Julie just pointed out, the art was done by Talon, Izzy Collier, who is Reaper's very, very long time concept artist from the early days. It's excellent concept art, and then Julie got to sculpt it. So, and Julie is wonderful at animals and humanoid animals, and I think she was the perfect pick for this piece. And I also love the pose, where it really looks like she's just seen an adventurer walk into her den and is wondering if it's lunch. Okay, so we're just going to get a little bit. I want this color to match the stonework that we just did. So I'm going to even get the underside a little bit. I'm going to pull it up here next to her paws. I'm going to still leave this dark shadow because I do want a shadow. As if the light is coming down on her and on her stone. I do want at least a tiny bit of shadow, so I want to get close. Except for areas here, like between her paws, where it would be darker. I'm going to enlarge this shadow again. There will even be a shadow under her paw there. This area probably will be right up next to her paw, so I'm using another flat, but a smaller flat. I still like flats for the base coating on the terrain because they cover a lot of ground with a lot of paint. There we are. There, now she blends in nicely. It's Julie, Julie, John David, just so you know. Julie Guthrie. They're sculpted at this size, mini painter. Now, for the 3D sculptors, for the people using ZBrush, it's sculpted at any size. You know, there's sculpting with a certain scale in mind, and then you can print it at various sizes. But there's a difference when you change scale in the proportions of the figure. Like if you look at your average miniature, let's take this Werner Clock piece that I have, this mage. So if you look at it, you always measure figures in heads if you're an artist. So you've got one head here, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this figure is only about 5 heads tall. And that's about what you want for a 28 millimeter figure. And if we look at this guy, same thing, right? There's a head, 5 heads tall also. So if you do this and you scale it up, the head looks huge. But at 28 millimeters, this is correct. So the problem with taking a ZBrush sculpt that's sculpted for 28 millimeters and then scaling it up is that the head quickly looks way too big. Because as you get larger in scale, the more realistic you have to be. The average human is actually 7 or 8 heads tall. So in real life, so you have to expand as you go up. So at 54 millimeters, it still usually looks okay. I wish I had my... I had a 28 that was actually printed off for me at a 54 millimeter size. Maybe I'll find her for next time just to talk about it. Narthrax is such a good dragon. But yeah, so essentially, when you're doing ZBrush, you do still have to sculpt to scale, even though technically you could print out the model at any size that your pretty 3D printer could handle. If you try to sculpt it at real scale and then you scale it down to 28 millimeters for printing, the head will look like a tiny pinhead. And if you take a 28 mil, 5 heads tall figure and try to scale it up to 72 or 120 millimeters, the head will look enormous and way out of scale. So, oh, that's okay, John David. I didn't enunciate, so blame me. You can always lay down and keep me and keep listening, Shadow Raven. I'm just, right now, we're waiting for paint dry, so I had to go off on the differences in scale. But yeah, if you pick up any art book on drawing figures, it's going to talk about how many heads tall a figure is. It's an easy way to scale a figure to look realistic, whether you're doing a drawing or painting or doing a sculpture. And it's just that when you shrink it down to tiny, to the miniature scale, then a normally sized head looks way too small. It's just like when we sculpt horses, right, for 28 millimeter. If you look at a real horse, its hooves are tiny compared to its body mass. But we sculpt them with much thicker legs and much bigger hooves because at 28 millimeter, that's what looks right to us. It's only when the horse gets very large that we're able to sculpt a horse that actually looks correct if you hold it up next to a photograph. So, hey there, dog father. All right, actually she's drying fast, so I'm going to mix up that wash. So I'm kind of thinking, yeah, let's try the Shield Brown and Cloudy Gray combo and see if that works. And if not, if I'm not real happy, I'm just wondering if it's going to be dark enough, essentially. I want some more dramatic shadows here. Just like we gave her more dramatic shadows, I want this to look like it's sunlit. So we'll go that direction. We'll see what it does. I'm going to see if I can get this dark enough. If I can't get it dark enough with Cloudy Gray mixed with Shield Brown, I will add some brown liner to take it down. So if we're going to start out, since we're mixing, when you are mixing colors, guys, when you are trying out a mix where you're like, I think I want to try a mix, but I don't know if it's going to work, start at the smallest quantity you can. So in this case, I just want to see what 1 drop of Shield Brown and 1 drop of Cloudy Gray looks like. I'm going to see if it looks dark enough. I may actually mix it into a wash at this point and put it just a little tiny spot over on the sand here, maybe at the outer edge, to see how it looks and how it dries. So doing a test is somewhere inconspicuous on the figure is recommended with washes to make sure that it looks correct. Like I said, my better choice would be probably Stormy Gray. It's a little bit darker than Cloudy, but that's fine. I can work with this. I'm going to grab a mixing brush and I'm going to drop a couple drops of water. Well, let's just mix it first and see. 1 drop of water on the brush. So that right away is actually an excellent shadow. Like I can tell that it's the right color. But is it the right darkness? Let me grab some of my brush on sealer and see what kind of wash we can build with this and see what it looks like. So little did you know you were going to get paint mixing lessons today. Yeah, John David Speaks. You totally should come to ReaperCon if we are getting our vaccine and we're all good for next year and ReaperCon goes forward, which we all hope. Then you should come out and meet all the artists and sculptors in person because ReaperCon is awesome. All right, so let's see what we got. I'm actually going to grab a different brush to mix with and to see what we've got. I want 1 more drop of water in it, I think, because it's not coming off the sides like I'd want, maybe 2. So we're about 4 drops of brush on sealer to 3 drops of water, which is a very thick wash because we did put down 2 drops of paint. May need to add, yeah, just a little bit more. Normally I would do 4 drops of sealer per drop of paint. So right now we're at 4. I'll put in another 4. So now we're at the proper ratio of sealer to paint. As you can see, it's just, even with 2 drops of paint, this is making a huge puddle of wash, which is good because I have a big base to cover. And now I'm seeing, if I don't put in more water, this is going to stay and dry darker. You can see that when I pull it transparent, when I pull it across the palette, it does go pretty thin. So, hey, Crowley Hamster, you're fine. Where do you look for pics, Julie and Bob? Do you look at the Reaper Miniatures Facebook page? Do you look at the Reaper forum? Do you look, where do you look for it? Or should people like post it to your Facebook page or tag you on Facebook or something when they post it up? Not sure. I'm not sure what social media network you Forums usually? Okay, so the Reaper forums. Cool. All right, so the problem here now, guys, is that as we thin this paint, washes will always dry lighter than they look wet. So when I'm holding this up and I'm looking at this color wet, I'm looking at this color as it dries, notice how close they are. If you look at how this is drying up here on the edge, it's very, very close to this color. What this tells me is that I am probably going to have to add a drop of brown liner. This will add more brown pigment and more black pigment, but it is more of a yellowy color, and it's got a lot of black in it. So I think it's probably my best option, because if I try to use something like russet brown, you can see how rich that color is. It's going to take it very brown, and with shadows, you usually want to, what they call, desaturate them, which is make them less bright, less vivid, less vibrant in color. You want to dull them out and cool them down. So we could do that a lot of different ways, but because we could do something like mixing in a blue, because it's a brown. Brown is just really a muted orange, so mixing in a blue or blue-violet would cool down this color. But I'm keeping it fairly traditional because I don't want to necessarily throw a bunch of other colors into this. So I'm going to put a single drop of brown liner. Hey, Wavy, how's it going? We are talking about mixing colors, how to use washes. We're talking about the Sphinx. We were talking about scale. So all right, so now I've grayed out this color a bit. You can see all the black in it has taken it very, very dark and more gray now, but it's cooled it down. It's not as warm. Now, the problem with putting this on top of this stone is that it might drop the warmth in this. It might cool it way down, and it might have a problem with our Sphinx. So what we're going to do is, since I added another drop of paint, we're going to add just a bit of sealer and water to make sure we can tune it well. You can see how much back and forth I do. But you can see why I started with only 2 drops of paint. Now I have room in this palette to experiment and push it one way or another. I'll put 2 drops of sealer in. And in the end, I'll end up with a big puddle of paint, which is enough paint to cover my base. That's tuned exactly where I want it. So that is the plan. So I think this is maybe just a little bit. Now the problem is the more paint I add to this, the more color I add to my wash, the more fluid I need to add, right, to make it translucent or transparent. So I kind of have to watch that as I'm getting up toward the top of this this thing. I feel like I do want just a little bit more shield brown, but at the same time, I'm really split because I do want my shadows darker and cooler. So I'm going to take this, actually, I'm going to use it as a paint instead of using it as a wash. And I'm going to paint it into the shadows here. I'm going to see how it interacts, how realistic it looks. I'm going to use it as a wash down here. And I really want to see how it dries. That's the big question here. Because the other problem with using, using the shield brown to take my wash more warm is going to be that the shield brown is lighter than the brown liner, and so it's going to make the wash not as dark. So you can see how much grayish, how much more gray this wash is than the stone around it. So we have to let that dry. But also remember, you know, this is going to dry lighter than it looks. So right away, I'm most worried about the fact that maybe I need to go even darker. This would be a good subtle shadow. Like if I just want a little tiny bit of shadow somewhere, like in that crack there or up here, you know, if I want to make these cracks kind of stand out and I don't want it to be too obvious. Like there's a really fine crack here too. So if I want real subtle, you can see how subtle those cracks are. If I want to get just something that's not really going to look like a harsh line, then this is a good shading color. But it's not a really, really dark shading color. It's not going to be near as dark as a regular brown liner. So while I'm waiting for this to dry, we're going to experiment a little bit more. It's washes episode. I bet you guys didn't see that. I would say, well, you're going to have to mix it into a wash anyway. I think Volcano Brown is too purple and too warm in Ara. I could be wrong on that, but my gut says what you're doing there, if you're going to do it, then I would definitely use the Volcano Brown somewhere else on the figure. Because Volcano is like a totally different pigment mixture than anything else on this Sphinx, I could tell you that. And because it is so purple and so weird, I'm wondering if it's going to react well with all of these really vibrant colors. And I don't know about that purple and how it's going to act over this. So maybe try it and see. I mean, when you're doubtful about something or you're not sure, do what I did here. Grab a piece of the terrain that is not, really evident, like from the front, you can see it, but it's just kind of, a little shadow down here. And put your wash on there, or try it back here, or try it back here. Try it in some non-obvious area to test it. And honestly, even if it doesn't work, you can always base coat over it and try a different wash. But yeah, it's always experiment time, right? Yeah, try the Volcano. I would worry because I know Volcano's pigment mix and it's got magenta and red in it. And these colors, if you're using the desert colors, have a lot of yellow and brown. They don't have reds in them. So that's why I'm thinking that it might clash a little bit. It might be a little bit odd. But if you like it, rock it. I mean, that's the bottom line with all miniature painting, right? In fact, if you started with desert sand instead of desert stone, because desert sand is lighter, you probably could mix shadows or have a glaze or a wash. That's Volcano Brown. Go over this because as it gets lighter, the color in it is less intense and it will fight less. This actually desert sand would probably go great with Volcano Brown. It still would be a little bit weird. They have very different pigments, and I might add a little bit of desert sand to your Volcano Brown wash, but is as you wish, really. If it works for you, it works. Bottom line. All right, so let's see here. So that's not quite dark enough. I am going to, it's not bad. It's not bad now that it's settling down. Oh, yeah. It's still not really showing up when it's really shallow. So it's not quite dark enough there. So I'm probably going to need to mix a slightly different version of this just for those cracks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer some of my existing wash, which is a little bit thick anyway, which is why it's actually drying as dark as it is. It's because I kept it on the thicker side. But you can see how much it's changing the stones also. So that's a thing. Let's see here. Let's grab our brown liner. And I always, when I'm working with washes that are very different colors that I'm trying to make work together, I put a little bit of, the previous color into the new color, for example. I was pretty sure, unless it is a really good match, like when we mixed that cloudy gray and shield brown, the color that we got was absolutely perfect to shade the desert stone. But if it looks a little bit off, the best way to do things is to mix a little bit of your previous color into the new color. Let me do another drop of brown liner and see if we can bring that even further down. And if you're going straight down to brown liner or something like that to do cracks or really dark shading, be aware that you can always take a little bit of your previous paint or even this guy and put it into here and it will make everything harmonize better. Just shifting that color a little bit toward the original colors you use can make pretty much anything highlight or shade anything else. And that includes going over green with pink. So, but yeah, so there we go. Let's mix this up and see what it looks like. Now, if I'm going to use this just for lining those cracks, then I don't need to do the brush on sealer. In fact, I don't want to, because I don't want to change the finish of the paint or the way it is coming off of my brush. Sometimes when so this has lightened the brown liner. You can kind of see it's a little bit hazy. It's not as dark and as close to black as it would normally be, and that's because we added some of that. So now I've got two shadows, right? I've got my initial, this, which I'm still thinking might be a little bit thick, and I've got a darker tone that I can use kind of for spot shading. So, and by spot shading, I mean all these fine cracks that a wash probably won't pick up, so, but that I might want to show and to pick up those nice details a little bit more. So now I have a crack. Now this color is perfect. It's not so harsh that it looks really dark against the stone. It's just dark enough. So I can go over here, and wherever I can see cracks and kind of like flaws, I can go around and block those in. I can even add some extra ones if I want. Like if I feel like there should be something down here and there's not, I can go ahead and kind of paint plastic surgery it in to give myself more cracks. Hey, Woden Skirts. Yeah, this is a very educational stream actually because I'm awake. I actually got sleep last night. We have talked about a lot of interesting things on this stream, so if you missed it from the beginning, I highly recommend going back to hear my thoughts on building custom washes and scaling miniatures. If you're a 3D printer, especially, knowing those scale rules is very important. If you've got a 3D printer and you tend to, do that, trying to print at different sizes than is intended can result in a figure that looks really wrong. There. So this lets me bring out all those lovely details and add the dark without, what I can do also is I can add all these shadows without worrying about dirtying this area. So if I really didn't want to put the wash over this huge flat area because I knew that it wasn't going to pick up much texture, which makes sense, right? Why would you wash this area if there's no texture to build up? Washes are meant to pick up texture. So if you have an area that's super flat, putting a wash on it usually just makes it look bad. Yeah, sorry, I'm zoomed way in, so it does. Sometimes I do travel a bit, Mini Painter. But, I mean, I'm just pretty much taking this and hitting all these little areas that I can see fine cracks on the surface. So I can pick out those details. And this is with our mix of our previous wash with one more brown liner and a couple more drops of water to make it real thin. If you used pure brown liner for this and you didn't thin it much, guys, what you'd end up is having like really dark like pen lines. Like it wouldn't look natural. It would just look like you drew with a pen on the model. It's a light touch and it's also very little paint on your brush and really thin paint. It's all of these things. All of these things that it's not hard, but it takes practice. Just to learn how much to load your brush and to learn what you need to do. The thing I always recommend is very little paint on your brush, take it off and then practice on your palette or on your fingernail to see how light of a line you can do and if it's the correct, weight of line that you're looking for. If you can draw a nice thin line on your fingernail with the paint, then you know that you can do the same thing on the miniature. Whereas if you see big puddles or you lose control, you know that you're going to have the same problem on the miniature. Now, what I can also do with this liner paint, this really lighter, slightly lighter liner paint, is I can go and really darken down this arch. See that dark shadow now? Anywhere that I think the sun is going to be blocked, I can accentuate my shadows, which I really need to do if we're going to carry the effect that she's in bright light. If anything, any model that's under bright light is going to have really dark shadows. It's why we kind of accentuated these shadows on her limbs. I think it works really well on this side. You can really see the sunlit surface versus the shadowed surface. And we kept the shadows warm because all of the light is going to be bouncing off of this warm stone back up to her. So this is where like I would use a combination here. And what I will do is use a combination here of our wash and our liner, because there are some areas like this big flat one here, this big flat top surface here, you don't want these to go darker. You don't want to put wash over them. Not only is there no detail to bring out here, it's just a block, it's flat. There's a crack here, sure, but you could easily just paint it in. But so there's almost no detail to bring out here with a wash, and these surfaces are facing the light. You don't want them to go darker. You don't want to have to go and repaint them. So those are areas I would not use wash on. But as you can see, even on the camera, you can see how the sides of this stone are darker. And that's what you'd be looking for. You kind of want to turn it toward a light source that is realistic. So like my light source, okay, so now it's lighter because my huge ring light is in that direction, going back up in that direction. So if I turn her so that I can see where the shadows really would be, then that helps. But either way, when light's coming from above, that archway is going to be dark. So you can kind of just make a judgment call. You can also just do the easy old-fashioned way of dropping kind of a plumb line, a brush. So if my brush doesn't touch something, see how it doesn't touch this whole area here? That means that that is in shadow because light would be falling right past that. It would be hitting the upper edge. You can always drop your brush in a straight line, and anything that your brush would not hit doesn't get like the full highlight. There is always bounced light and other stuff like that, but keeping it simple for now. So looking at this and looking at how it goes, I would probably do a wash first on any area that has a lot of detail. And when you apply a wash, you want a lot of it on your brush because you're really trying to flood the area. You want to focus again on areas that are going to be in shadow. You don't want to really put a wash on anything that's going to be picking up the light. In that case, I'm a little bit wrong to do it on this area, except that this area has texture, right? And it's got tiny texture. You're within your rights to use a wash on an area with tiny texture because you know you can dry brush or highlight, side brush, whatever you want to do, whatever technique works for you to bring this area up again. But you don't want to have to do that to the whole darn model. So selective washing is really, in my opinion, the name of the game. You can also do some light lining with this wash, like, you know, just use it to kind of line between stones like I did there. If I don't want it as dark as some of the rest of this, I can just kind of outline these stones a bit with my wash. So washes can be liners. They are very subtle liners usually, but it works. So I have a really big ring light, which is a nice ring light, and that's just mostly because, you know, since I'm doing video work, I want the light on my face when I'm talking to my camera. So right behind my my face cam up here, John David, is a big Neewer, Neewer, which is a decent brand of studio light. It's a big ring light. It's at least it's a 16 or 18, I think it's an 18 inch, so it's big. And that one is more, like I said, it's more for the face cam than for anything, but I call it the sun. That's its nickname, because when I turn it on, it lights up the whole room. It's a ton of LEDs, and it's great because you can tune the up and down, you can tune the warm and cool. So it's really, really nice. And it's got a tripod, and you can break it down and put it in a travel case. It's a nice ring light. The other one is actually the same lights we use for ReaperCon. So it's an LED. It's an L shape. Comes up, comes out. This is my secondary light. It is adequate to counter the ring light because I can get it closer to the model. I have it on its daylight or reading setting, so it's about the same warm and cool balance as my ring light. It took a while to figure all this out, guys. And then also I do have a window right next to me, so I'm getting a little bit of ambient natural light to boost this little light. But I use LED lamps because I like to be able to tune the light color and the light intensity. And both of these, both the cheapo L lamp that I use, that's Tautronic, so T-A, or Dowtronic, however you want to put it, T-A-O-Tronic. You can get them on Amazon. They're like $40. The ring light's a lot more expensive. But I used to just use two of these, two of the little L lamps, one on each side of me. Why are you apologizing? Everybody wants to know about lighting. Never, ever, ever be sad about anything. There is no derailing on this stream. Like, there is no like getting off topic on this stream. This stream is about all things mini painting, and it's about deconstructing the mystery for people. If you think you are the only new person on this stream watching right now or watching on YouTube later, you are wrong, John David. Every question you ask, no matter how much it seems to derail Anne, is useful. If it wasn't useful, I wouldn't spend the time answering it. There are no stupid questions. Yeah, if you ever asked a question that I thought was too specialized or that was kind of like, you know, well, that's, you know, I don't see where you're coming from, then I'll say so. and I won't spend as much time answering it. So ask whatever. And if you're overthinking something, I'm pretty brave about telling you so. So like if you really are, if the question is just like, oh, you're way overthinking this, I'll tell you that. So I'm a straight up girl. I shoot from the hip. So yeah, no question is bad. Always ask questions. There's a lot of people on this stream who are really good, but there's also a lot of people who watch this stream who are relatively new, and they all appreciate it. Val, you get that all the time. Yes, because the rule for you, Val, is just do it. That's your personal rule right now. Just do it and learn from your mistakes. Yeah, I really like the Teotronics light. I mean, I'm the one who introduced those to Reaper. Because I was looking for an LED light. I was so sick of carrying light bulbs with me. And it was at about the time that LEDs were starting to get good enough. And I love the fact that I could switch the color of light on that one and also lower and raise the intensity by 5 steps until I tuned it perfectly for me. And a lot of OT lights and lights like that I didn't like because they were too blue. So the fact that this one wasn't blue is what attracted me. And then once I got it for my, I was still the staff painter at Reaper at that time. I hadn't gone full time into the paint department yet. Ed came in and looked at it and went, oh, we'll order a bunch of those for Paint Club or ReaperCon. And, you know, we just started using them everywhere because they're really a good price. I mean, it's $40 and it lasts pretty much forever. It would be hard to break. Plus it breaks down really well. It's not that heavy. You can carry it in your bag on airplanes. You know, it's a great travel lamp and it's a great painting lamp, in my opinion. Some people don't like them as much. You know, there will always be people who don't like X or Y, and that is perfectly valid. I'm sure they've got awesome light that they would also recommend. But I like the combination of cheapness and light tunability, I guess, and travelability. I like all that. So here I am taking our watch, and I'm not putting it over the whole surface in a lot of areas. I'm painting with it. I'm putting the shading in. Then I go back to my liner when I get to these fine cracks. Again, whenever you're on a flat surface with really fine cracks, do not do the wash. It will just save you time not to do the wash. Even if you try to do these little lines and you're not as good at brush control as I am, one thing, this is going to make you better at brush control. Doing this kind of thing where you are following a pattern that exists on the miniature is exactly what gets your brush control to the point where mine is. Like, it's this sort of thing that made me good. And since the pattern is there, if you go outside of the lines, you can see it and you can just touch it up. No sweat. It's just rocks. Yeah, it's a great light for the money. Yeah, they are really good. Yeah, John David, I'm all about it. Like, for years and years, I've taught painting to new people, and it's new people that fuel the future of our hobby, right? It's so silly not to be welcoming and not to be, like, you know, really encouraging and to try to help people when they're having trouble in the hobby. Like, there are other painting hobbies and hobbies out there that have not been welcoming to new people and younger people over the years. And those hobbies are having real trouble right now. A lot of them are dying. So it's really is, it's just a no-brainer. I mean, you're new, you don't know everything. A lot of us have a lot of knowledge and experience. Why wouldn't we help, you know? To me, it's just a no-brainer. All right, so let's focus in on this one. So here's what I'm doing is I'm essentially grabbing any side. See how that is the cast shadow right here? You can even just hold it under your lamp and you can see where the shadows would cast. And you're just are gonna ape that. You're just gonna use your light source and copy it. Copy what you see. And that's the easiest way to learn shading. Is just to use an overhead light or a light that you can at least turn your model toward in the right direction. And look at where your shadows fall and accentuate them. Now I'm going to use a little bit of a dark line for this little stone here that looks like it has a lid. Or a topping capping stone. Looks like it might have been an urn or something at some point. This one is definitely a jar now that I look at it, so let me just shade that. So this is like kind of a cracked jar. It's definitely has seen some better days. So I'll, and it could just be that the bones material didn't translate it as a great shape. But I'm going to paint it as if it is cracked so that it makes sense that it's on its side in a ruins. I don't think it would have survived this collapse intact anyway, being a jar. So now I'll grab my wash because I've got some tiny tiny bits down here that need to be outlined, and I don't want to sit there and outline all of them manually. So grab the wash, put it in there. But now you can see how much detail that we're getting. Exactly, Max Styles. Max Styles, that's funny. Bring home more minis. That's the bottom line, isn't it? So now you can see the difference with a little bit of wash. And yes, if I had thrown the wash over this entire surface, I would be a lot faster, right? But I'd also wouldn't have it as looking as good. I'd have a lot more touch up to do. This is kind of what happened to me when I stopped using washes. I'm still going to use the wash on some areas. Any area which has a lot of texture that it would take me a long time to fill in, where I don't really mind if it gets a little bit darker, I think I can come back and fix it, right? I'm going to use that there. But any big flat surfaces that I know I want to be lighter, I'm not going to want to fight that shadow later on. So I'm just going to manually paint that shadow in. And I'm going to be consistent. If you have a question when you're looking at something as to whether it gets light, kind of compare it to other surfaces around it that you've already painted. Then you kind of can figure it out and see, oh, okay, well, I shaded this area and that area is kind of the same, like this one and that one are at the same angle. So both would have a slight shadow, right? Same with this kind of edge down here. This would definitely be a darker shadow. Any place that's really recessed, like this area between these stones where you can see that there's darker shadow, paint it in. Grab your liner color and paint in that darker shadow. Utilize your lighting to tell you where to shade and highlight, especially if you're trying for a dramatic lighting effect, like you want a sunlight, sun and shadow kind of light effect. Shadows are very dark in direct sunlight. So some of these, and even like the crack between these stones, I can darken that down. So what we have here is kind of the question of, do you want precision, and do you want it tight, and do you want to save yourself work down the road, or do you want it fast and loose? If you want it fast and loose, throw the wash over everything. I think I've got mostly shadow down the front of this, so we will throw the wash on that. Since the light is coming from above and this has a slight edge around it, this area, at least the top of it, is going to be mostly in shadow. If you've got an area like that, because there's going to be some light bouncing back up at these great columns from down here on the ground. So what we can do is we can put that wash down over the whole area. Remember, you want to put a lot of it down. You want it to pool. So you want to add a lot. You don't want to paint this thin layer of wash over the area. You know, darken it in because you're going to have that rim. But now, before it dries, grab some water in your brush and kind of thin it at the bottom part. And what that does is you're essentially wet blending a wash. And you can fade it out by doing that. So you can keep a little bit of it. See that? You can keep a bit of it where it would be shading. And then you just keep it, there's just like a little tiny bit at the bottom here. So it still outlines the columns mostly. And if I need it later, if I need to accentuate, I can bring my liner in and kind of, bring those in. But then this does exactly what it would do in real life, where it would be darker up at the top and lighter at the bottom because of all the sunlight hitting this stone and bouncing back up at something at the underside of the stone. So that's a trick that you can use if you want to put a wash only part of a surface and it's flat, and you don't want to have to worry about blending it later. Is just put your wash down, then grab some water, use your brush to kind of pull the wash and feather the wash out. And that way you can get that darker to lighter effect. So now I can really come and highlight these rocks and bring some of that light up onto the lower part of this rock, and it's going to work. Like it even looks right. It looks right even now. So yeah, Reaper is not a big evil corporation. We might be a small evil corporation, but in general, yes, we are not evil. Reaper strives to be unevel. So this is probably needs to be a little darker. I do want to put a wash probably in this area because it's a bunch of jumbled little stuff with a bunch of texture. Again, I'm going to make my judgment call based on how much texture there is. Always remembering that this is, a lot of this is facing the light, so I will have to come back and highlight and kind of adjust what I've done. That's the thing with washes. GW contrast paint is the one that's the wash product that's the least intrusive as far as shifting the color of the upper surface. But almost all washes are going to color that just at least a little. And it depends on what your base color is too. So again, here I've got a bunch of little debris. So I'm going to come in and bring that wash in. So now we're starting to get everything up. And the fun thing is that you can also test your light versus shadow here. Like obviously these areas are going to throw you off just a little bit because they are facing the light and they would be lighter than this. And I'm going to have to go back and adjust. But otherwise, I can look at how I'm doing with these stones here and see whether my highlights and shading look right. Just with my first... oh yeah, take your money every other year with Kickstarter's evil. Yeah, that's what we do. Well, you know, and by that token, so many companies are evil. My pocketbook thinks that many, many miniatures companies are evil. So then we can look at this stone here. You can see where the shadows are falling. So I don't want them to be very dark though, because this is the same kind of vertical surface I've got up here and here. So I just want to use the wash. And again, this is a precise way to use a wash. You don't have to cover the whole surface. I'm just painting it over the vertical and texture surfaces to pick up the little texture that's in there and to add a bit of shadow. So this is a different way to use washes, to use them more as a layering tool. But at the same time, you've tuned it so that it's also a decent wash. And since you're using it both ways, you've got the same colors working, so it's going to be in harmony with everything. All the colors are going to work together because they're all based on the same thing. Going to accentuate the shadow underneath that edge now, because it would be. The shadow right under an edge is always the darkest when there's direct light in play. Hello, Enzig. Oh my gosh, 258. No wonder you have no room, D. Clearman. No wonder you have an entire, like, basement as your miniatures office. That's crazy talk, man. Okay, you know what, though? I probably have that many miniatures sitting around in boxes waiting for me to paint them, so I can't be too critical. Yeah, that is the good thing about miniatures, is that they are liquid. They are liquidatable. You can always sell, especially if you get decent at painting, you can actually make a surprising amount of money back. If not, make more money than you spent. You have a dedicated storage closet. Oh my god. That's good, John David, actually. That's a good attitude to have when your significant other has a all-consuming hobby like miniatures. You know what, though? There are still more expensive hobbies that you could have, right? Depending on how many Kickstarters you indulge in, I guess, these days. So one thing I'm noticing is that I am getting a little bit, well, no, once it dries, I guess it's matte. I'm getting a little bit of a shinier finish from some places where I'm pulling my wash, and that's probably because I haven't mixed up my wash in a while. Remember when you're using brush-on sealer that it is a more matte finish, but that matting agent tends to settle out. That's why I tell you always to shake your bottle of brush-on sealer until the agitator comes off the bottom. So if I go a while without stirring my wash puddle, some of that matting agent is going to shift to the bottom because I put so much water in this. And that means that I'm going to get a little bit of you can see the slight gloss. There's just a tiny bit of slight gloss there. So now that I've mixed it up, I'll go over the top. The other fix for that, should you notice it, is you could mix up some brush-on sealer with just a tiny bit of anti-shine additive in it and just put a clear layer over the top if you don't want to shift the color. Oh, that's fantastic, Max. Yeah. It's better than drugs, but it may be more expensive. Haha, Tashi, thank you! Yay, 2 months! Awesome, awesome. It's all good. So yeah, so actually this is coming out. See how all the details are coming out now, guys. So even though I'm not putting the wash as a wash over. Now you do see what I mean though. Like there's a puddle here at the top of this area. There's a kind of a rough puddle here. You can see how the wash is not as precise. And this means that I'm going to have cleanup to do. So the reason I stopped using washes like as washes in the first place for most things is that I found that I was spending more time cleaning up areas that I had put a wash on than I would have taken me to just use the wash selectively as I did through here. I would have gotten a faster, better result with less adjustment after the fact than I would by just putting a wash on. So, more dragons, yes. Yeah, there are definitely more expensive hobbies. So then, essentially, on this, on these pillars that I got kind of mucky on because the wash got kind of, you know, it went places and it's kind of got an uneven finish, and you know, it's not a, it's going to cost me some time. So this is why I tend to encourage people to learn just how to paint, use the wash as a paint on shading, like do it selectively like this. Like this is going to take so little adjustment, like maybe just a little bit on these areas with lots of little details, you know, but you could even like do a light dry brush or side brush over these areas and you'd be pretty good, and you haven't messed up the rest of your stuff, and you're able to kind of like judge whether your shadows look right. And here I'm going to have to like take down this shadow. So I'm going to have to come back in and adjust it. I'm going to have to kind of take some of this mottling of color out of here. You know, going to have to go in and do this. So it really depends on where you want to be spending your time. And for me, I'd rather spend my time on selective shading and making it, you know, look good out the gate, so that even after I put a highlight on this, I probably could call it done. You know, I'd rather do that than have to go back up and touch up washes that look messy and make me sad. And everybody's different. Whatever your, like, you know, point is where you're just like, ugh, that's where you should pay attention to how you might be able to not get yourself in those situations. So when you are doing a technique and you're like, oh man, this is just painful, stop and kind of maybe look around and see how other people do it. And maybe you'll find a way to do shading or highlighting or whatever, or details, in a way that doesn't make you go ugh. Like it's always going to come down to doing the work and putting the paint on, but there is definitely like stuff that saves you work and stuff that makes more work. Doing a little bit of lining out here. Darkening down that area. Always be having fun, yeah. Thanks, Mini Painter. Yeah, I'm very much a selective kind of girl. I really enjoy doing a selective wash and using liner to tweak it, because I love seeing the details come out. I love seeing, you know, just watching things get more crisp, and all of the you know, edges and all the cracks I can do. This is where I'm in my happy zone. I love doing detail work. So the alignment of washes. But yeah, so I really, this is where this is my love zone pretty much, is where I'm just enjoying painting, because it's just like so relaxing to just like be hitting all the little vertical and under surfaces and watching all these stones start to come out, and all the character of them, because they are all great sculpt. It seems odd to say that Julie is really good at sculpting basing, but Bob and Julie both are really good at sculpting basing. They make it interesting, so it's not just a pile of rocks. Like, this is really nice. I love the little Egyptian touches with the fluted column here on top of the sarcophagus. It's lovely. It's just lovely stuff. So it's a pleasure to have this kind of fun stuff to paint as part of a base, right? Instead of just having a rock. Yeah, totally. You know I mean it, too. I'm such a fangirl. So blocking in that dark shadow with that liner. See, that's going to be a very dark fissure back in that sarcophagus. So, and if you get like a little bit too much paint on the edge here, you can just wash out your brush to make it damp and just scrub off the edge. Yeah, basing is fun. It gives the environment to the figure. All right, so let's see here. Let's go back. Let's maybe work on, this is good, but I have to get up here. I don't know that I want to glue her down. I do want to put a shadow here. So if I look, there's like this area under her tail that maybe her tail was meant to sit in, but it's like not quite flush. Instead, I can just use that and put a shadow there to show where her tail is. So I'll take her off, and it's this area right here. So I can essentially put in a darker shadow where her tail would be. A cast shadow, in short. And since her tail isn't flat on this area, I can at least suggest a shadow that is right under it, and that will look right. And I don't have to worry so much about using kind of everything as a wash right now, just to block in a little bit of a darker shadow here. You can't see much of the detail once she's popped on. You can see that her tail maybe should go all the way down, but I'm fine with that. Like, so now that I've put a shadow there, yeah, Maldrakar, heads and limbs everywhere. Yes. But Maldrakar is so awesome. All right, so now I'm going to bring in a little bit more shadow here. I want to put at least a slight shadow. Now that I've got my my shadow colors really figured out, I can minimize this really dark line right under her by painting my wash shadow over the top of it. And I know that this is going to be vertical and it's going to have an underside, and the underside will be dark because it'll be away from the light. So even though we won't see much of this as we peg her in, just blocking it in with a dark shadow and with a more of a mid-tone helps us when we put it back on here. If you can see any of it, it will read correctly. See, and here we can see that underside right there. So painting it dark is absolutely in the cards. Yeah, hang on to that resin one till you think you've got a lot of dragon experience. I have one also, John David. I have a plan for it, but it's such a huge project that I have not put aside time or figured out when I'm going to execute my plan. I have so much to do. Since I went freelance, I actually have less time rather than more time. It's not fair. Not fair. All right, so just pretty much doing the underside of this darker. And I can keep fitting and unfitting. I need a shadow. Yeah, airbrush is definitely a good way to get your base coat and shadows and basic highlights down, for sure. And then you can have fun with the details, so. All right, I'm going to block in a little bit of shadow here. Once again, I'm going to use this wash to kind of weirdly lighten the lining I have down there, because it is a little bit lighter than the shadow. And to blend in that shadow here, add in a little bit of my lining stuff, dab in some of my lining color so that it makes it a little darker, a little better of a transition. She's bent over, so she is going to have a shadow there. Some models won't have it, Max. I talked about this with my BF, my boyfriend David. Some models don't go through the butt ugly stage. If you are really into it and you are just like winging along, like it is possible to have a project that just never gives you that trouble. It's rare though. Most of the time, we all get a butt ugly stage, but it depends on how you paint. Like, for me, I don't get a butt ugly stage these days, usually, unless I've really made a mistake. in either color choice or balancing shadow and highlight or whatever. And the reason is that I paint everything in sections to completion. So I never stop when a miniature looks awful. I base coat. Sometimes I will base coat an entire figure to establish lights and darks. But even then, the miniature isn't like butt ugly, right? And David, I think, like, David sometimes will hit a butt ugly stage, but even he, like, he'll block in light and shadow so starkly, but it'll look great, and then it's just tuning. So I think it depends on how you paint. And if you notice that you get a butt ugly stage, ask yourself why. Like, what is causing this? Is it that you're maybe base coating and then washing everything, and it's just looking bad, and then you lose the impulse to work on it? In which case, maybe try it the way I do it, or try it the way that David does it, and just block in everything all at once. Highlight, midtone, shadow, boom, do it, and make sure your light source is good. It's yeah, brush control, John David. So then, I always say this, but even though you wince, but a model like this is great practice. All these little cracks, outlining all these little shapes. It's just, the great thing about brush control is that you automatically get better at it as you paint, as long as you make yourself do stuff like this, as long as you're not always just base coating and washing. You have to make yourself do the fine lines in order to get good at them. But it doesn't take that much. But I mean, nowadays when I stall on a figure, it's not because I've hit the butt ugly stage max. It's because I've maybe I've gotten too ambitious. Like the last project I really loved, but that I stalled out on completely, was Circe. And it's because I decided to chop off her hand and sculpt a new one. And that was intimidating and crazy. And I did sculpt a new hand. But then it's just the oomph of trying to pin that in place and then sculpt the wrist again. And it became to the point where there's so much resistance around it that I put it aside. And eventually, one of these days, I'm going to take it out, look at it, and go, I don't have that much work to do on this. Pin it and do it. But that's more likely to make me stall out. Another one is and I've learned this the hard way, but if I do try to do the base coat the whole model and not paint in sections, I will stall, because the base coat to me is just so ugly and bland, and it just emphasizes how much work I have to do. And I hate that. Like, I love being able to, like, get the short-term gratification of painting the section, making it look really good, and then moving on to the next section. And so when I have to base coat everything on a model, it kills my soul. Like, I honestly will not want to work on it anymore. I made that mistake. I've got a beautiful dryad from Creepy Tables. She's a huge dryad bust. She's gorgeous. I really wanted to paint her, but I made the mistake of base coating her because I used her for a bunch of Patreon demos, and then I hated her. So you gotta know how you paint, and you gotta figure out what part of the butt ugly phase, what's really causing that butt ugly phase. And if you figure that out, then you can figure out a way to paint that never hits it, in my opinion. The only reason, Val, though, I mean, you really don't. I mean, your thing is, Val, you're very ambitious, and if you keep at this, you're going to get really good at it. But you're trying to do a lot at once, and that will stick you in the butt ugly phase. So really, try to focus on, like, small sections of the models that you're working on, and work with specific techniques, and try not to do everything at once. Like, that's the best advice I can give you, because it's good to be ambitious. It's good to want to get good. It's good to keep trying. I love how you keep trying. You're not losing your love of the hobby. That's perfect. You keep at it. You're going to get really, really good. But don't try to jump in on too many levels at once. Definitely, like, try to learn it. Like, I put up a free PDF on my Patreon with kind of different some basic techniques, both mechanical techniques that you need to master and conceptual techniques, right? And I put that up so that people could maybe pick one of those that's next up on the list and focus on learning just that. So if you're good and your brush control is improving and you do a nice smooth base coat, next go to lining, right? Like, and then work on lining. Work on something like this base. Lining and shading until you get good enough at it, then go to the next thing. But when you are trying to just shoot all over the place with different techniques, that can be really, really soul crushing, because then you do feel like you live in the ugly zone, right? So really, There is definitely a point in every model where you run up against resistance pretty hard, max styles, like near the end. Every model, every artist, every creative endeavor, I hit it, David hits it, everybody I've ever talked to hits it. You get close to the end of a piece and you just kind of lose enthusiasm for it. And that is not like because you've been working too long on it. It's actually just a thing that artists hit. Writers hit it too. When you're close to the end of a novel, you'll hit all this like just feeling like you're sick of it and you don't want to do it anymore. And you're so close to done. It's so dumb, right? But for some reason, our brains get this in there. And so you just got to go through it. You just got to ignore it and do it. And that's the same for everybody. And you'll never get anything done if you let that resistant feeling win. If you believe that you've been working on it too much and you let that feeling win, and then the model just sits around and never gets done. And so much, in so many ways and in so many times, it would take so little to fix it. But it's always prettier and shinier to work on a new model. So, you know, that's the thing we fight, right? We all love to start new projects. It's always the potential of the beautiful sculpt that gets us. And then we put aside the thing that would only take us 2 more hours to make look good, and start a new thing because we think the old thing is maybe compromised, or maybe it's just got hit by the ugly stick and we don't want to look at it anymore. I think it helps to step outside of yourself at such times and really look at it objectively. Maybe get a friend who you respect to look at it and say, well, I feel like this is just not working. What's the issue? You know, there are so many of us in this hobby that we all hang out in the Reaper community. We hang out on the Discord, my Discord if you're a patron, and we'll help each other. Like when people post stuff up on my Discord and want feedback, I tell them, you know, and so do a lot of my other patrons. So it's easy to get feedback, I think, and pretty good feedback in this community because everybody's so friendly and they want to encourage you. Probably it's more, it's harder to get a harsh review in the Reaper community than it is to get a good, a helpful review. So sometimes you got to say, be harsh, guys, like be really harsh, really tell me what's wrong with this. Because I need to get better. I want to get better. And then people will take the kid gloves off and they'll say, okay, well, your lining sucks here, so let's fix that. Something like that. So I've blocked in a lot of shadows here on her base. And I've kept the rim kind of light because that's where light would be falling down. There would be a shadow under this paw, so I'm going to shade this little projection of stone that's under her paw, and it would probably fall back to here, so I have some shading to do there. Yeah, I don't like to strip minis at all. Well, if somebody in your family fell in love with something you did, then, rock it. Just make sure you have pictures. You always want to be able to show people like down the road, especially, when you really love the hobby and you're really into it like you are, Val. And I think, like I said, I think you're very high potential, and you should keep at it, and never get discouraged. But, you always want to have examples of like the work you feel was truly terrible. If you can, because then when you are teaching somebody in the future and they say, oh, but you're so good, you can say, oh yeah, look at this horrible piece of crap I painted when I was first starting out. It makes everybody feel better. Yeah. Well, if they like it, that's great. If the niece likes it, awesome. She will enjoy it. Don't let what you think about it interrupt what she thinks about it, It's valid. It's all valid. All right, I'm going to put the cracks on top of here, I think, and shade these rocks. These rocks have a lot of texture, so I think... Yeah, skeletons are hard because the bones can be so difficult. Like, you either have to paint them, like, kind of quick and dirty, or you spend a ton of time on them, and then you feel silly about doing so because it's just bones. Bones are real hard to get feedback on. Because you got to tell us then, Margaret, you really need to tell us what your goal was, right? That's the thing. If you want good feedback on any miniature you do, tell people, this is what I was trying to do. This is where I think I might have done it. This is where I think it's not quite, it's not really working for me. What do you think, right? That way we know what you were aiming for, how you feel about it, and we can give you more feedback more geared toward. So I got a couple smudgies up here. No smudgies. But it's easy to paint over smudgies. I can block off those smudgies. Oh yeah, good point, D. Clearman. Yeah, switching up the lighting and looking looking at a mini out in you never want to put it out in sunlight or outside because that'll show you every brush stroke you ever did. But indirect indoor light, like I've got this window here which gets kind of bounced sunlight, it doesn't get direct light. That can be nice to look at, or in just a different like David takes his into the kitchen because we've got this huge round light in the ceiling, so he can look at it with like straight overhead light, really strong overhead light. So he'll take it into the kitchen to look at his models and remove it from his desk lighting situation. So that's a really valid call, David, D. Clearman, because, yeah. I like the triads for bone, John David, actually. The first bones triad that we did, the aged bone, polished bone, and bone shadow, I still really like those colors for, like, I always wanted a kind of a grayed out rotted bone because all the bone colors I saw were really yellow, like the ivory triad. That was my bow to the yellow bones, yellowed bones stuff. But I really always wanted kind of a gray rotting bone. And I also really like, sadly, I think Graveyard Bone got canceled, but the other bone triad that came out later, 9272, 9271, 9273, I don't know if all of them were canceled. But those are kind of in between. They're more of a neutral bone. And I really do like the bone triads. If I have to just throw some bones together, I can. I mean, it's not hard. You choose an ivory or a pale beige or something. It helps if you look at actual photos of old bones to know what you're trying to do. Because you could go a lot different. You can do a lot of different ways. Hey, Pendrake, how's it going? Good to see you. We're going to wrap it up real soon. I've been working on basing. We did a lot of, I think this was a great stream for info. Like, I feel like we have really talked about a lot of extremely useful topics today. And Sphinx's base is coming along. Yeah, that's what it's, Kiri is sleeping and she's eating more, and I gotta go and pick up her meds after this stream. But yeah, she's doing a lot better, Pendrake, so... So that's good. That's a weight off my mind. Let's see, where's Sphinxy? Let's back her up. Sphinxy. So yeah, as you can see, compared to the amount of contrast on her, the stones need a lot more. But at least we've started. We've started to pull them off. So, and I think we've been going for a while, but I did cancel. So anybody have any more questions about anything we've been talking today or random stuff? I'm going to keep putting a little bit of washes on here, and then I'll text Justin in a few. I think I'll do some cracks. But yeah, that's what I like about the whole Reaper. Yeah, the Reaper artists in general. I think that part of it, I mean, part of it is like the Reaper painting competition at ReaperCon, right? We actually, that's the mindset that we ask our judges to cultivate, is to think like that, is never to discourage anybody, but to give feedback on, you know, honest feedback on what you could do better and what you're doing well, you know. The point is to encourage people in the hobby. Like, I never want to hear stories of the kind of stories that you hear from writers and artists all the time, where a successful writer or artist will tell the story of how when they were in school, their teacher told them they were crap, right? Their teacher said, oh, you'll never be a writer, or, oh, you should just give up art, you know, bad teachers. But there's all these stories out there, right? And then they go on to become like a best-selling, you know, painter or author or really good, you know, writer, you know, respected person in their field, you know. I never want to hear that story about anybody coming from Reaper. Like, there are enough lousy things in the world to push us down. We should never push each other down. Sorry for the Discord alert. I forgot to go on streamer mode today. All right, so again, tracing in those cracks. Now here, I'm using my darker color, but I might go back on that. I might end up glazing over that because this is facing the upper surfaces. This is facing the sun. And so I may decide that later on that this crack is too dark, but it's pretty easy to glaze over it if you think you have gone too dark. You would glaze over it with your base coat. So you would take, here, let me show you. Let me see if I can do this quick, and then I'll text Justin. I don't mind going a bit over because with Kiri disrupting our schedule, we've been on and off. So mixing up a glaze with my desert stone so it's really thin, and I'll try to glaze part of this line. And I'll just put a light coat over the top of it, and I'll just brush it on actually. And see how that fades out the line. The line is still there, but see how dark it looks here and how much lighter it looks here. This is going to look a lot more realistic if I'm putting a bright highlight on top of this stone. So, sure, John David. No problem. Yeah, thanks, DM Stoltz. DM Stoltz. Yeah, it's no problem. I am all about the info. I am all about the enabling people to paint better so they can love the hobby. That's it. That's all of it. That's my goal. I believe in it. And if the fact that I have made mistakes for 30 years, helps you guys, if I can share my mistakes and my fixes for them, then all to the better. I put a dark shadow around this rim. This is such a nice sarcophagus. As much as you can say that about a sarcophagus. There's probably somebody buried in it. Maybe the Sphinx uses it as her lunch keeper now. Like she can just, it's broken, but she can still flip up the lid here and put some body parts in it and flip it down. It probably keeps it cooler in the desert sun, right? Not quite a refrigeration unit, but Yeah. I'm glad we worked on the Sphinx this week. I may continue. I don't know. I may switch to a character tomorrow. I'm not certain. Depends on how I feel in the morning. Because I've covered a lot of good info. This was a really good brain dump day. So having had such a good brain dump day, I may need to brain dump on a totally different topic. And go back to the stones so we can finish out all the shading. I'll probably, since we talked a lot about this time, the next time we do Sphinx, I'll probably paint a lot faster on the rest of this, since I won't be stopping to explain quite so much. Also, there aren't as many fine cracks on the back of the piece. So we'll be able to move a lot faster, and then I can get to highlighting this and how I would choose colors for that and how I would do it. And that will be cool. Super cool. I will text the Justin. Hold on, let me get her in focus and focus, Sphinxy. There we go. Sphinxy in focus. Where is our Justin? There he is. I will tell him ready for raid when you are. And I'll be doing my stream this afternoon, the D&D stream. We're going to try to roleplay a bit, I think, today. I just need to, cram some more info about the system into my head. If we have to do kind of fast and loose with the rules to get, just some fun roleplay in, then we'll do it. I haven't had a lot of time, since it's not the weekend, I haven't had a lot of time to read through the D&D rules, so I'm, cramming. But yeah, that'll be this afternoon at 4:30 p.m. Central Time on my stream, which is twitch.tv/paintingbig. Also, for those of you who are new and who might want even more awesome instruction from Anne, I have my Patreon. It's patreon.com/paintingbig. That's pretty much where I am everywhere. Painting Big on Twitter and Painting Big on Instagram and twitch.tv/paintingbig. You name it, I'm painting big. So even when I'm painting little. So yeah, so if you have time and you want to roleplay some D&D, come and hang out with us this afternoon on my Twitch, and we'll be working on Zari and her friend, Staccato, while we roleplay her. There they are. A bard and her dog. So yeah, there we go. So we should Justin should get my text at any point. Yeah, I decided I wanted a D&D game, and I just moved out here, so I don't have one. So I'm just gonna Twitch D&D with all my friends. So it'll be what we do. So yeah, this will be the first time we'll try some roleplay. We'll see how it works out. Yeah, it's painted to look like my Kiri. This is what my Kiri looks like. So cute. Except Kiri has stick up ears instead of folded ears. But she's just blocked in right now. But I'll be doing some more fur texture and highlighting and shading on her. I want to get her collar red today so she matches her person. So yeah, absolutely. So we'll do that. So we've been doing all sorts of fun stuff today. You can see how big this Sphinx is next to Zari. Pretty cool. This has been a fun figure to paint, I gotta say. And we're not done. We got lots more to do. And then I'm so excited, guys, to start my other characters for this party. Kiri is immortalized. Yeah, well, once I finish the fur, but she does look like Kiri. So Staccato looks a lot like Kiri. I had to fix the eyes a little bit because the eye markings got a little bit big, but they're close. And the expression is all Kiri dog. So yeah, Kiri dog is doing pretty well right now. She's asleep. She's like totally snoozed. But hopefully we are on the mend and I won't have to worry so much. Geez, Justin is taking his sweet time. I should just keep working on these rocks while I let me just check and see if he... No. He just hasn't gotten back to us yet. All right, we'll keep working on rocks. You can stick around if you want. Oh yeah, twitch.tv/paintingbig. All one word. And since I wanted everybody to be able to kind of roleplay and have fun telling stories with us, I decided not to use like a D&D interface or anything. I'm just gonna I'm gonna paint and I'm gonna run the game, and you guys get to roll dice and tell me what the players do. And when more than one person has an idea what the character will do, then we can discuss it in light of her character and come to a consensus. Yeah, so twitch.tv/paintingbig. And my Patreon is patreon.com/paintingbig. And I do have some free stuff up on the Patreon, so.
I'm here, sorry.
They're summoning you. Yep, they're like, where the heck are you, Justin? I'm going to take this mold line off this claw while I'm waiting. She had a little mold line on her claw that I missed. So yeah, we had fun, Justin.
We have a Zambies.
We have a Zambies? Oh, we should totally raid that Zambies. Zambies exists to be raided, I'm sure. Justin out there playing WoW in the background. No, Shadowlands isn't out yet. It's just almost out.
Correct. Otherwise, that's a reasonable guess. But all jokes aside, we're getting ready for the episode tonight, and we're giving away 100 things. I promise everyone here will want to be there.
Oh, yeah. So Reaper Live, 100 things. Wow, that's crazy. That's just a lot of stuff.
We're going to be playing a... kind of Deal or No Deal inspired game. We're going to be doing some marbles. We're going to just do some flat out giveaways.
Nice.
And we'll have a normal episode of Reaper Live. It'll be fun, guys. 100 things.
Oh, wow. So this does sound fun. Will Ron's pants be in there? He should give away an old pair of jeans.
6 p.m. Central.
Yeah, 6 p.m. Central time. So you could like come and do my D&D stream and then go right over to Reaper. Okay, guys, this has been super fun today. Thanks for hanging out with me. Maybe I'll see you later.
And of course, Anne, you're welcome to win stuff too if you'd like.
I've got more than enough stuff, and I don't need Ron's pants.
All right, thanks, guys. It is actually Bearded Goblin. Being that we're done with daylight savings now, I believe. So we actually, we are in CST now. Yeah. So thank you guys very much, and we will see you at 3 p.m. is Painting Platinum. So if you guys want to hang out for that, you're welcome to. But 6 p.m. is Reaper Live. See you guys there. Bye.